Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar, today sponsored by our friends at Esri. I'm Barbara Duke, Editor-in-Chief here at Directions Magazine with our webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. We appreciate our loyal listeners and community of geospatial professionals having been with us for 25 years now. We're excited to have Ishmael Shavite and Barbara Webster with us today. We are going to see a great collection of information and demos on how you can build location-aware forms with Survey123 web designer and improve those workflows that are so important to making things work in your office. So welcome. We are excited to learn more. Ishmael, over to you.
Thank you, Barbara, and to you and all the Directions Magazine team. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm going to co-present with Barbara. Barbara and I are going to talk today about building location-aware forms with the Survey123 web designer. And the agenda, you can see here, is quite simple. I'm going to start with some concepts around location-aware forms. What is a location-aware form and why it matters? We'll probably spend about 10 minutes on this. Then I'm going to give you a quick tour so you can learn how to get started with the Survey123 web designer. How can you create your own location-aware forms? Then I'm going to go a little bit in more detail, covering some advanced techniques for good form design. I will talk a little bit about sharing your forms, touching on security and best practices. And finally, Barbara is going to run our live Q&A. You can ask questions at any time, but at the end, we will look at all the questions and answer them live. So with that, let's start with location-aware forms, what they are and why they matter. I don't think we need to introduce the concept of a form. Forms are universally used in many industries, and they can be used for many different reasons. Forms are a simple yet very powerful way to collect structured data. Now, because we work with GIS, I want to give a pause here and think about the relationship between forms and location. Location is an important question in many forms, not all of them, but many. For example, say you are completing a building permit, a building application permit. Well, where is the building is kind of an important question, right? Or if you are completing a form to report an incident, where is that incident? Well, that really matters, is important. Same with damage assessments. Say you are doing an invasive species survey, you are completing a form, and locating where the invasive species are is also key. Same with restaurant inspections and you name it. Now, the thing is, how do forms handle location? I would argue that in many cases, they do it very poorly. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. I literally downloaded this form from the web and I pasted a screenshot here. It's not important who created this form. It's more important to understand how location is handled in this form. So this form is designed so a citizen, a person, can request to the city to be connected to a utility network. So one of the key questions in this form is the property address. In other words, where the connection needs to be made. As you complete this form, you type text, you enter the address as text. Of course, if the address is just a piece of text, there is really no location, it's just text. If you want to map the requests to connect to the utility network, then, well, you need to parse the addresses, you need to geocode them, you need to put them into a map. And there is no guarantee that the address is going to be correct. Here is another example. This happened to me. I went down to the beach for a walk and I found this kind of quote form. So the idea here is someone wants us to report any tar balls that you may find in the beach. And they ask you to send an email and report the date observed, the time, but also a specific location, the GPS coordinates. how can I expect people to type in the geographic coordinates where I found a tar ball? I mean, the user experience is not ideal. You are not going to get very good quality data when people send this type of form. So what we are going to learn in this webinar is how to build forms where location is a first-class citizen in your form, not a second thought. I'm going to show you, let's go into my browser here, what these forms that I described a couple of minutes ago could look like with Survey123. So this is my utility bill connection request. I literally took the same questions that I found in this online form, and then I created my own Survey123 form. Okay, so the key here is, again, the first question, the property address. So I'm going to start typing here an address. And as you will see, this is not a standard text question. This is an address type of question. So here, as I start typing, you can see that I am provided with some addresses that exist in the city of Redlands, because this is, I restricted this to the city of Redlands, and then I can basically continue completing my form. And at this moment, this is a form just like any other form that you may want to create on your own, right? There is nothing special about the rest of the questions. Email question, phone number, here is a list, another list here, and then finally a signature, and then boom, you submit. Once I submit the data, I get a thank you screen, as you can see here, kind of giving me a confirmation. Thank you, so and so. The request to install a new meter at this address was submitted successfully. Please check your email and proceed with the installation fees. Okay, so the idea here is we just completed the form, but now if I go in the back end, you will see that the data that comes from my form is available to me in both a table and a map form factor, right? So I'm going to check on the new request that was sent, and it's mapped. All the attributes, as you can see, are here. So this is kind of interesting, right? People entered an address, which was validated while I was entering it, and then I got a geographic location, XY coordinates, that I can now map. Similarly, with the tarball report, I created a Survey123 form. It's pretty simple. Enter the date and time as requested. And then for the location, well, in this case, it doesn't make much sense to use an address. So in this case, we are using a map type of question. This is kind of unique, right? You can use a map in a Survey123 form to help people establish the location of something. In this case, it's the location of this tarball that we found. And then you can upload other type of information. So in this case, I'm going to upload here the photo of the tarball I found, enter maybe my name, my email, and then again, just submit the data, right? So as you can see, with Survey123 forms, you can enter location information in your forms in a very intuitive manner. You can do it through the address type of question. You can also do it through a map type of question. So in summary, forms are pervasive. They are used constantly in our organizations for many different things. But we need to think about how location is handled, because often location is a second thought in these forms. We have an opportunity here. With Survey123, we can build forms that handle location much better, allowing you to provide a better user experience, boost the quality of location data, and of course, explore this information in a geographic way. We can help people in our organizations do what they do on an everyday basis better, so they can collect this data and then have a look at it from a geographic perspective. This is already happening. Organizations worldwide are adding geographic intelligence to forms to make this happen. In this case, you can see that an organization is sharing over social media form, so people can report damage to their property after a severe weather event. This information comes into a dashboard where you can look at the data as it comes using a map. In this case, organizations are using location-aware forms to help citizen scientists report field observations, sightings of wildlife. In this case, location-aware forms are used to support studies, like in this case, the Food Security and Livelihoods Impact Survey from the World Food Programme. This was done during COVID. It's a survey with hundreds of questions, and many of them are location-based. So you can capture this geographic data in the form directly, and then explore the output of this scientific investigation geographically. And on the right side, you can see a form from the city of Glasgow. They are also using location-aware forms, so people can not only tell the city what they want to see in terms of urban planning, but where. Okay, so now I'm going to move into the second section, getting started with the Survey123 web designer. Here I want to give you a quick tour so you can see what it takes to build these location-aware forms and how they really work. I will also ask you to use your phones here. I'm going to share a link with you in a couple of minutes so you can submit data. So Survey123 Web Designer, this is a web-based visual form builder. You don't need to know how to code. You don't even need to know GIS to create your forms. If you know what questions you need to ask, you can use the web designer. It provides you with a drag and drop user experience, so you can build your form design. And you can, as you will see, you can add geographic intelligence to your forms fairly easily. The web designer is included with ArcGIS. So if you have ArcGIS Online, you have it. And if you use ArcGIS Enterprise, you have it too. All you need is an ArcGIS account with a creator user type. That's all you need to create your own forms. So let's have a look. I'm going to go into my web browser again. I'm logged in into ArcGIS Online, as you can see. And right from the app launcher, you will find Survey123. So you click here, and then this opens the Survey123 website. This is the website where you're going to view and manage and create new location-aware forms. We will be using this throughout the webinar today. Now, if you want to create a new survey, you click there, new survey, and you're going to start from a template. We have a handful of templates that you can use as a starting points, or you can start from scratch. This is what we will be using today, the web designer. Okay. Alternatively, you can also use another tool, Survey123 Connect. This is way more advanced, allows you to do way more things. Today, we're just going to cover the web designer. So you click on Get Started, and you get here. This is the web designer proper. So as I said, it's a very easy to use tool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a tarball reporter. It's pretty simple concept, but it will help us kind of describe how this works. So the trick here, think of it as this is my survey design. You click on it and you can change things. So for example, I click on the banner and then I can center the text. I can change the text. So let's type here tarball reporter. Click on the description and then edit the description. Here you can enter, say, found a tarball. Then do not touch it, just report it. And then we ask people to complete the rest of the form. Speaking of touching and changing, I touch the submit button, change that to report. I'm going to click on add here, and you can see here a gallery of question types. You will find the usual suspects. Question types to add text, numbers, time, emails, lists, and so on. But you will also find this section, and this is pretty unique to survey, map and address. And we will work with this throughout the webinar. So let's just start here by adding date and time. So what is the date and time of the report? And now I'm going to set a default value. So what I'm going to do here is, well, when the form opens, I want you to immediately capture that time and date so the user doesn't have to enter that. Next, I'm going to capture the location of the tarball. So I'm going to use a map. And again, I can go and tweak the label. So this will be location. The map question accepts many different types of drawing tools. You can use a point, a line, or a polygon. Well, in this case, it's just a tarball observation, so I will go with point. And of course, the map you can customize as well. You can set a custom extent for your map, but most importantly, you can also click here on Edit and then choose whatever base map you think is best for your own purposes. Now, you can even, if you are already using ArcGIS and you have a web map, you can also use your own web maps. So this is listing web maps that I own, so I can check on this one, and this will set the map here appropriately. So again, maybe I want to go to, say, Santa Monica and center the map right there. So boom, there you go. And I can center the map here, since we want people in Santa Monica to report tarballs, right? Very important here, the default location. Just like we set a default date, here we can also set a default location. So here there is an option, this one, that allows me to use the device location when the form opens. This is kind of interesting. This is what really makes my form location aware. So when the form opens, the map will center at your particular location. This is, of course, if the privacy settings in your mobile device are set to allow Survey123 to grab your location. If not, you will see a message saying, hey, this form is trying to get your location. Do you allow that? And then we will use the location from your device. You can, of course, use this option to make your question required. In our case, we really care about the location of the tarball, so I'm going to check it. And then I'm going to add a few other questions. For example, I'm going to use the image question to collect photos. So these will be photos. I'm going to leave it as optional here. I could make it required or not. You can see the settings here, the different things you can change. And then I want to show you also these options here at the bottom, display and structure. These are technically not questions, but they are useful elements in your survey design. For example, this one allows me to create a group of questions. So this will be, for example, the contact info. And let's add a description indicating that this is all optional. Groups are great to logically organize questions in long forms. So in this one, I'm going to add a single line text question here for people to enter their name. And because I don't want to enter people entering their name every time they submit this form, I'm going to scroll down and say cache answer. This will make the Survey123 form remember your name if you happen to report multiple times, which is pretty handy. And I will also use the email question in this group. So I'll add here email, and similarly, I'm going to cache the answer. So as you can see, this is a very simple way to create your own forms. You can explore these options on your own, and you will find, well, lots of different things that you can do. I'm going to go into appearance. You can also give your form a personal touch using predefined themes. You can create your own as well. And also we have the thank you screen. This is a dialogue that will show up when people submit their survey. So in my case, what I want to do here is maybe I want to tweak this a little bit. Your report was submitted successfully. And if you happen to enter your name, I'm going to grab the name that you entered in the form. You see this option right here, insert answer from another question. So I'm going to get the value from the name question, and I'm going to add it in here. Thank you, and then this will be replaced with whatever name you enter. And then I'm going to set here this policy. So immediately after the thank you screen is displayed, I want to wait 3 seconds and then load the survey again, so you can actually submit another request. So I think I like this as is. I'm not going to make further changes, so I'm going to publish this. So this is going to take maybe 30 seconds or so. In the meantime, while this is publishing, I'm going to ask you to get your phone, because I'm going to publicly share this survey that I created so you can submit data to me through this form. Okay, it's published. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Collaborate tab. This survey is private to me. I can use it, but you can't, until I come here and I say, who can submit to this survey? Everyone. Okay, so at this moment, anyone with this link can submit data. So what I will do first is I'm going to share this URL with Barbara so she can share it with you in the chat window. But also, I'm going to open this QR code. So if you have your phone, you can now scan this QR code and then submit data. So I'll give you a minute to do this. I'm going to switch here to the data tab. I just want to see if any records are coming in. Wow, look at that. It's pretty fun. Lots of data here. I'm going to hide the email here. Okay, but you have here the names, the date and time of the report, and also obviously the different points that you submitted, right? So more are coming in. There you go. We have people from all over the place here. So you can see how this works, right? How easily you can create a form, you can share it with people and feed your GIS with useful information. You can explore the data through the map and the table. You can also use the Analyze tab. These are all built-in tools that you can use to explore your data. You can see some of the photos that you are all submitting, the names. This kind of creates a summary of the data that is being sent to us through this location-aware form. So pretty simple, I think. And I guess that's the whole point of Web Designer, is to say, hey, if you know how to drag and drop questions to create a form, use Survey123. You can also add location questions, right? So you can capture the where of things into your own forms. So let's help organizations transform their forms into location-aware forms. So all of this data that currently is not coming into GIS, now it can come into GIS. If you are a GIS expert, of course you can do this, but think about it. It's like, do you really need GIS skills to do this? Not really. If you know the questions you want to add to your survey, you can create your own. So it's kind of a great concept here to help our organizations transform their forms. Okay, so let's go back here and touch on a few design tips. As you use the Web Designer, you will learn a lot on your own by simply playing with it and trying different things. But I want to highlight a few things that might not be so obvious. One of them is this concept of calculations and geo-calculations. A calculation allows you to pre-populate a question in your form with data from other questions in the form. Like in this case, you can see that a customer number is entered, and automatically the full name and the email contact are populated. That's a calculation. Give me the customer number, I will figure what's the corresponding name and email. Here's another example. This is a geo-calculation. Give me a location, and I will get the XY coordinates to find out what is the proper assessor's parcel number. This is a point-in polygon query that you can use. You could be querying parcels or police districts or whatever polygons you may have. Here's another one. Actually, this is also a point-in polygon query. You give me an address, I know the XY coordinates of this address, and I use these XY coordinates to query the urban planning polygon layer. So I can tell you for your address in what city zoning you fall into. Let's have a look at how you can work with these calculations. So let me think. I'm going to go with, let's go. Remember that utility bill connection request form that I demonstrated at the beginning? Let's add a few calculations here. So the simplest way to do a calculation is as follows. Let's pretend that, of course, we are going to ask users to type the property address, but we want to also have a separate column, a separate field in our survey results specifying the city. We want to extract the city out of the address as a separate field. So what I will do is I'm going to add a question called city, and then I go into the calculation option, I click on edit, and then I say, I want to extract data from another question in my form. So in this case, I want to extract question data from the property address, and I'm going to specifically extract the city. You can see here that you can extract the latitude and longitude, the country, the postal code, the geocoding accuracy, right? So I click OK, and then this will extract the city. Let's have a quick look at this. I'm going to preview my form design and see how this really works. Let's type in here 400. There you go, city automatically calculated. Now, would you want users to change the city? Well, maybe not. Maybe what you want to do here is you want to scroll down a little bit and say hide from survey. In other words, we are still calculating the city, so you have it in your table, in your survey results, but users will not actually see it. They will type in the address and off you go. Let's do something a little bit more sophisticated. I'm going to ask you to type in a phone number, and then I will tell you what name on the account is associated with that phone number. So for that, I'm going to obviously calculate the name on the account, right, based on the phone number. So same idea. I go into the calculation column for the name on account. I click on edit. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract layer from a layer. So in my ArcGIS Online organization, I have a layer for customers. You can see it here, right? Let's have a look at the item details page of this customers layer. This is basically a table listing all my customers. And you can see that I have the phone, the full name, and other information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to query this table. You give me the phone number, and I'm going to fetch the full name. So let's go back in here and say, yes, I want to use this customers table. And then what do I want back from this layer? Well, I'm looking to get the full name. That's the output field. And how do you want the full name to be retrieved? Well, give me the full name whenever the phone one column attribute matches the value in the question in my form called phone number. So I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to preview. So now I go into the phone number, I type that in, and I get the name on the account. Let's try something different. Let's try this phone number now. Let's go back here, enter the phone number, and we get the customer name. So that's how you build your own calculations. And if you explore these options, you will see that you can also use locations to do geo calculations. But I will leave that to you. You can explore that on your own. So that's one important tip, calculations. Tip number 2, working with addresses. Addresses are about the most intuitive way for people to point the location of something. And I want to emphasize these, addresses, not maps. There are many occasions where if you want to get high quality location data, you may get better results using an address than using a map. Not always, but very often you do. So if you ever use an address type of question, I strongly suggest that you use locator views. And I will demonstrate next why they are important. So when I add an address question like this one, right? This is an address question. I brought it from here, address question. So when you bring in an address question, by default, this address question is going to connect to what we call as a locator. A locator is basically a list of addresses, right? So if you have a subscription to ArcGIS Online, you have access to a world locator, right? The ArcGIS World Geocoding Service. So let's have a look at how this behaves. This is the default locator. I'm going to preview this so you can see. This is basically a list, a locator of the whole world. So it sounds great at the beginning, right? It's like I type any address and then it actually returns me existing addresses. But not really. I mean, you type 340, say new, and I get addresses in Oklahoma, and I keep typing in here and I get something in New Mexico, Pennsylvania. You see, you can get an address from anywhere really where there is a 40 New York Street, there are addresses in Florida, Montana, etc. So only when you start typing Redlands, you are getting, in this case, what I really wanted, which was an address in my city, right? So use allocator view to restrict the addresses that this is going to return. So you only get addresses from your area of interest, right? So say, for example, you're building a form to collect information from, say, the city of Chicago. So you want to have a Chicago locator. So you only get addresses from this city. In my case, since I'm only interested in Redlands, I would pick this one, right? You start typing and you only get addresses from Redlands. But you can even be more creative. Like in this case, I have a USA postal codes locator. Why did I do this? Well, there are times when you don't want to nail the address because you want to protect the privacy of the user, and the address is just too scary, right? It's too exact. So in some cases, you want to let people just type in, say, a postal code. So this is actually now using a locator that only works with postal codes, right? So say, I'm going to select this postal code, and then I proceed with the rest of the form. I'm still going to get a point. In this case, it's the centroid of the postal code, the zip code. But I actually get what I want, which is a location. Not a very accurate location on purpose, but I can use an address question to sort of find the XY coordinates of something that is not a true address. It's just a postal code. You can use these with fire hydrant IDs, asset IDs, you name it. Themes and thank you screen. You can change the look and feel of your forms with themes. And this is important because sometimes you want your surveys to be embedded in a website, and you want the survey to look kind of like your own website. So you can use themes to control the look and feel. And the thank you screen is kind of important too. It allows you to, of course, thank people after they spend time completing your form, but you can use it to bring data that was typed in by the end user into this dialog to confirm data that was sent, to provide further instructions. You can even drive users back to another website where they can continue doing their work. And the thank you screen and the themes, pretty straightforward. They are available right here. As you can see, you have some predefined themes, but most importantly, you can build your own. So in this case, I'm going to go back into the Tarball reporter demo that we created at the beginning, and I'm going to use the appearance to create a custom theme. So you see here, edit theme. So now I can scroll and change a lot of things in here. For example, one of the things I want to do is I want to set a custom image in the background of my form. So I'm going to search for an image in my computer. I'm going to upload it, and this becomes the background of my survey. And then I'm going to touch a little bit the opacity, so the form has like a partially opaque background, so I can see the image through the survey. And then I can save it, I can publish it, and this becomes the theme of my survey. If I go to options, you find the thank you screen. So in the thank you screen, you can add text, you can add images, you can add links, etc. You can also here control, as we saw before, if the survey needs to be loaded again or not after the thank you screen is presented. So play with this. You can remove that image that we include by default and upload your own and make this really pretty to give sort of a nice thank you screen to people at the end. Tip number 4, and this will be the last one before we go into the next section, multilingual surveys. So the thing is, you can translate your surveys into multiple languages. One survey, many languages. Users can change from, say, English to French to German. But when they submit, all the data comes into the same table. And how you get to the language editor is actually pretty easy. Let's go back to our utility bill connection. So I'm going to edit here. I'm going to go into options. This is where you configure the thank you screen. Now, if you keep scrolling down, you're going to find the manage survey languages. So here you can add as many languages as you like. So in this case, I'm going to add Spanish to the list here, and then you can start translating. So this will be the address in Spanish. This will be the name of the person and the telephone number, etc. So as you change the preview, you will see that these questions are translated. Let me translate this so it's kind of more obvious. In this case, it's a bigger piece of text. So you're going to allow me here to use Google Translate for a second. So I'm going to flip this to Spanish, and then I will copy the text and then get that translated text back into my language editor, and voila, there you go. And even the header you can translate. So this is actually an image. So you can add a different image that will be displayed when people change to Spanish. So this is the same banner, but in Spanish, right? So now when I change between the different languages, you can see that it changes the language across, right? So that's kind of the idea with the language editor. Okay, so again, I encourage you to explore on your own and learn the many things you can do, but I thought I would share with you these 4 tips for sort of advanced techniques that you can use. The next topic is super important as well, is about sharing your forms. Survey123 forms can be shared publicly, and I did this in the initial demo when I shared my form with you. When you share a form publicly, the person completing the form doesn't need an ArcGIS account. You can share your links in social media through a chat window in Zoom like we did today. You can even embed your surveys in existing websites. So I'm going to explore with you through a demo a few tips about properly sharing your forms, but I'm also going to emphasize the topic of security. If you are collecting sensitive information, you want to make sure that your survey is public, but your survey data is not. Okay, so we are going to talk about that. And of course, you can also share your forms privately with ArcGIS groups. In this case, people completing the form need an ArcGIS named account with permissions to edit data, to add records into a table. So you get that when you buy an ArcGIS editor user type. So let's have a quick look at some aspects of sharing, such as security, social media cards, and HTML embedding. Okay, so sharing Cardboard Reporter. You remember we authored this, and at some point I said, oh, I'm going to go into the Collaborate tab, and then here I checked this, right? Everyone. This is the moment, that was the moment when I made my survey public. So by default, when you author a survey, it looks like this. You create the survey and only you have access to it. So you can come to the Collaborate tab and say, I want to share my survey with everyone, okay? Now, if you keep scrolling, you see that there are additional options. And some of them are kind of, very, very interesting. Like you can, for example, restrict submissions to just 1 per person. You can also open and close your survey at a particular date. So you can display a message when the survey is closed to say, I want to open my survey tomorrow, and I want to close it in a couple of weeks, right? So the survey will be accepting only records for a couple of weeks. After a couple of weeks, this message will be displayed, and you can customize this message, of course. So I guess what I want to highlight here is that when you share your survey, the only thing that submitters can do, people with access with your survey, they can only add new records. They cannot look at the data, okay? If you want people to look at the data, then you need to come to this tab here and look at sharing your results. So similarly, you can share your results with groups within your organization. You could also share it with everyone if you don't have sensitive information, right? But the key here is there are 2 different things you can share. You can share the survey for people to send data. You can also share your results, right? Very different things. Even here in Share Your Survey, you can get in trouble if you turn on this option, right, to update records. So we're going to give you a red warning saying, hey, if you allow people to not only add, but also update records through your survey, then your data can be exposed, right? Because if you want people to change data, then you need to expose data, right? So a malicious hacker could actually access your data if you're not careful, right? Now, hopefully, by default, this option is always on, so your data is always going to be safe, okay? But just be aware of this. Now, let me talk also about how to share your survey in social media or through a website. So I can share this link with people, I can share the QR code, and people can submit. Now, if you want to share your survey here in social media, my recommendation is that you always come here to edit survey info, and you make sure you have a nice looking card. So let's use this one, for example, here. And then you have a nice name or title and a summary. See, found tarball, or help us, let's say here, help us map tarballs in the beach this weekend. Yep. Summary, name, thumbnail. Why? You'll see why. So let's go here into, I'm not sure if you still have a Facebook account, but I will use Facebook today. And I'm going to copy here, I'm going to share my survey. Thumbnail, title, summary, right? Thumbnail, title, survey. You can make your social media cards look nice if you take some pride on your thumbnail, title, and summary, right? Better looking social card, probably you are going to get more hits on it. Similarly on Teams, so let's go here, and then kind of a similar thing, right? In Teams, I can share my survey, and this is going to use the thumbnail, the title, and the description of the survey as well. Now, the other option here is you can go and embed your survey in a website. So for this one, I'm going to come here to the utility bill survey that we demonstrated before. I'm going to go into collaborate. I'm going to make sure it's shared publicly, and I'm going to go into embed website. So as you can see here, this generates automatically a piece of HTML code, which you can now use to embed your survey in a website. So I'm going to go and kind of hack the City of San Diego website here. This is something that typically a web developer will do. Okay, so you go into the Survey123 website, you get this HTML code snippet, and then the web developer will come and use it in the website. So as I said, I'm going to edit the HTML code here in my browser, and then I'm going to select, for example, I want to replace this with a Survey123 form. So I'm going to edit the HTML right there, and then I'm going to enter that HTML code snippet. And you see it's loading, the Survey123 form is loading here, right? So now it's part of my website. You can see that we have a scroll bar. A lot of people say, oh, how can I get rid of that? It's like, well, this is because the survey doesn't fit within the container. So you can click on the container here and say, look, the height of this is going to be as tall as my own survey. So you can see that the scroll bar went away, and this really looks like very nicely integrated now within my own website. You can come here and start using the website as we did before, right? And then complete the survey from here. Same behavior. So if you ever go and change the survey, you don't have to touch the HTML code anymore in your website, right? You republish your survey, and then the new questions will appear in the website directly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Barbara. She's going to share with you a few resources so you can learn more, and we will go into the live Q&A. Barbara, it's all you.
All right, thanks, Ishmael, and hopefully you all can see my screen with the slides. We've covered a lot of functionality today, and there are quite a few resources online for you to learn more. Many of these resources are blogs that discuss topics like working with addresses and securing surveys, just to make sure that you're getting the most of out of Survey123. And so we'll make this PowerPoint available to you, so you'll be able to access these links. And I think Barbary just put these links in the chat also. So the next Survey123 webinar that's coming up is going to be the ArcGIS Survey123 Tricks of the Trade, Create Report Templates. Survey123 report templates are something that we didn't cover today, but in this webinar, you'll learn how you can export the data that you've collected in your survey to a customized PDF or Word format report. And so this just provides you with another method of sharing your survey data. So this webinar is going to be on April 19th, which is next Wednesday from 9 to 10 Pacific time. And you can use this QR code here to register. So I'll just leave that up for a minute in case you want to use the QR code. All right, and then at the end of April, we have another Survey123 Tricks of the Trade webinar. This one's going to build on the previous webinar and show you how to use automation software like Microsoft Power Automate or Make.com to automatically generate those Survey123 reports. So for example, you could set up a Power Automate flow so every time someone submits a survey, a report is going to be automatically generated and then emailed out or uploaded to cloud storage folder. So that's just one example of a way that you could automate your reports. And then, so this webinar is going to be on April 26th, also from 9 to 10 Pacific time. Okay, and next we're going to answer a few of the questions that have been coming in from the chat. And if you have more questions, please feel free to keep sending them into the chat. So we actually got a couple questions surrounding updating records or surveys. So Ishmael, one of the questions is, can Survey123 be used to monitor sites once they're collected with the app? And then if not, what's the best set of practices for Survey123 to collect the initial data and then have a user-friendly way to update?
Sorry, I was on mute. So yes, you can use Survey123 forms not only to create new records in ArcGIS, but also to update existing ones. And you can edit these records both using the Survey123 web application from a web browser, as well as the mobile application. We have a blog that describes in detail how you can use the web application to edit existing records. I'm going to make sure that this is added into the list of resources in the Esri community that you will get through an email after the seminar, after the webinar, so you can learn more about how to do that. Similarly, with the mobile app, I will make sure I include a link so you can learn how to do it with the mobile app as well. But I guess the answer is yes, you can monitor and change the status of existing records using Survey123 forms.
All right, great. And then we also got a few questions regarding geographic constraints. So one of the questions is there an option to block adding data outside of a polygon? And so I'm thinking, for example, if you only wanted surveys with geographic data in the city of Redlands, would you be able to enforce that?
So the answer is yes. However, to do that type of thing, you need to use Survey123 Connect, which is another authoring tool. I'm going to share my screen here very briefly so you can see the concept. There you go. Thank you, Barbary. So this is kind of the concept, right? If the pushpin is within the green polygon, I'm happy. Otherwise, I'm not. So you see when the pushpin is outside, you see that it says the location is outside of a Redlands Park. So in this case, we have a polygon layer and we want the points to be inside. Otherwise, we don't let people submit. You could use a polygon layer where the only polygon is your city or your county or your country, right? So this is technically possible, but you can't build this data validation rule within the Survey123 designer right now, although we are working on that. So if you want to do this, you will want to use Survey123 Connect. And again, I will make sure I add a link to the written Q&A so you can have a direct resource where you can learn how to do this. Back to you, Barbara.
All right, and then so another question we have here is, how does the responder switch languages in the form? This is for a survey that has multiple languages, and this isn't part of the question, but maybe something that might be useful. Are there limitations on which languages can be used in a form? So is there only sort of specific
Great question.
that are supported?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the first one is, when, say I translate my survey to Spanish. So I have a version in English and Spanish. So what Survey123 does is, when the form is loaded into your web browser, we check the locale, the language that has been set in that browser. So if your operating system is in, say, Spanish, and your survey has been translated to Spanish, the form is going to automatically be displayed in Spanish. Okay, so that's rule number one. Now, if you want to change the language, in the top left corner, you will find a menu that allows you to change between all the available languages in that survey. Additionally, you can create links that open your survey in a specified language of your choice, and you can include these links in notes throughout your document. And I have seen this been done by a lot of people. It's like, you know, in the initial description at the top of your survey, you include a note that says, do you want to open this survey in Spanish? And then when you click on that link, it's actually, you know, opening the survey with a parameter that opens that survey in a language. So again, the answer is yes, you can do that, and I will provide also the specifics in the Q&A. Now, the second question is, how many languages can I translate my survey to? So here you have to keep in mind a couple of things. One is, we only translate ArcGIS into a well-defined number of languages. So say, for example, you want to translate to Swahili. Well, ArcGIS has not been translated to Swahili. So while you could translate your survey questions to Swahili, the Survey123 application itself is not going to be in Swahili, right? It's going to be, say, in English or in French. So I think when you are building web forms, this is not a big deal. But when you are working with the mobile app, it is. So the mobile app will be in, say, English or French, and then your survey will be in Swahili. So I guess, long story short, you can translate your survey to whatever language you want, but don't forget that ArcGIS, the application itself that renders your form, might not be available in all languages.
All right, great. Yep, that makes sense. And I'm just finding the links to those two webinars so we can put those in the chat for you in case you want to sign up for those. So let's take a look at the next question here. Oh, this is a good question. So can map features be selected and submitted? So for example, if you have an existing data set of hydrants shown on a map, can you go back and update the status for each of these hydrant locations?
Yeah, as we indicated before, you can use forms to edit existing assets. So I think I'll provide more details in the written FAQ. So, you know, just for context, after this event happens, Barbary, from Directions Magazine, you will get an email, and that email is going to have a link. And in that link, you will find access to all the resources, the written Q&A, as well as the PowerPoint that we use today. So just so you don't, you know, you're going to get all the links for sure.
Yep. All right, and then let's see, what's another good question here? So can multiple locations be added to one survey form?
Yes and no. So I think typically, generally speaking, you are only allowed to add one map question or one address question to your form, generally speaking, okay? And the reason is that the ArcGIS data model restricts the number of geometry columns in your layers to 1. So that's generally speaking. Now, there are tricks you can play. For example, what you could do is to say, well, I'm going to create a form within a form. In other words, I'm going to create, say, a form where I collect, say, the parcel ID that I'm inspecting, and then I'm going to add a subform where we are going to detail the different incidents or issues we found. And for each issue, you are going to let me know what's the location, what's the issue, and maybe a photo of the issue. So if you look at this in the ArcGIS data model, you have a main layer for the parcel you are inspecting, say polygons, related to the issues layer, which is a point layer where you can have one parcel, many issues. So this technique is totally doable, not in the web designer that we explored today, but you can do these type of things with the most advanced Survey123 Connect tool, right? So in that case, you will have two maps in your form, one to pick the parcel, the polygon, and then another map where you can add one or more issues into your form. This is totally supported because, again, you have two layers, each with its own geometries, so that allows you to have two maps in your form.
All right, great. So I think that is just about all the time we have today. And there were a few questions that we didn't get to, but we are going to add these into a FAQ document that we'll include on the site. And I think with that, we can hand it back to Barbary.
Oh, thanks so much. What a great presentation and opportunity to really include some wonderful community interactions into our workflows. Just great, Ishmael. Thanks so much. Thanks again to Ishmael and Barbara for sharing their expertise. We hope that you will join us for more geospatial webinars. Have a wonderful day. Tell a friend about Esri's ArcGIS Survey 123 and Directions Magazine.